It's time for your daily LSU baseball update with Musso at the box. Now, Matt Musso.
And welcome into another edition of Musso at the Box. LSU, the Tigers are steamrolling towards the Chapel Hill Regional and NCAA tournament play. We now know the game time. They will face Wofford at 11 a.m. Central on Friday to start the 2024 postseason. We will have you covered wall to wall here on Musso at the Box. You know that, and we're fired up for another postseason run for the LSU Tigers. Today, what we are going to do is something we've done every year here on Musso at the Box around this time. It is our postseason Q&A. I put out the call for questions. You all respond with what you want to know before LSU starts the postseason. It's really one of the last installments of our Q&A where we do the preseason, the right before conference play, the halfway conference play, and now the postseason. And I'm fired up to get to it. There are some questions that I expected to see. There's duplicates, and there are some really good ones as well that I'm excited to dive into. So we're going to do that over the next 30 or so minutes here. Get subscribed up to the YouTube channel if you have not already. Smash the like button if you have not already. Subscribe up on your favorite podcast app as well. And follow me on social media, y'all. Let's get right to it. And where we start is something that I was going to talk about anyway on today's show, but I knew if I put out the call for questions, this one would come in droves. And it did. This was the most duplicated question by far. And you probably already know where I'm going with this. It has to do with how LSU handles the pitching rotation and jump Holman in what order, or if LSU could hold Gage Jump and pitch off, quote unquote, pitch off against Wofford and, go forward with Jump Holman in some order from North Carolina and potentially a game number 3. There's a very easy answer to this question, but there's a number of different ways you arrive at that very easy answer to this question. The very easy answer to the question is this: no, LSU is not pitching off. Gage Jump is going to start game 1 of this regional, and he should. Now, how do you get to that answer? I said there's many different ways. Number one, you can look at history with Jay Johnson and what he's done. I mean, that's the most easiest way to go through this. Everyone's going to point to last year, and I've heard plenty of people do this, where LSU started Paul Skeens against the 4 seed. But that doesn't actually do justice to what happened last year. Paul Skeens is the greatest pitcher in college baseball since Steven Strasburg. And you not only started him against a 4 seed, you started him against a 19-win Tulane team that was your 4 seed. They were not good. LSU pummeled them in the regular season. They had won 19 games, for Christ's sake. And you started Paul Skeens, the greatest pitcher the game had seen since Steven Strasburg. That's a very loud statement, but it goes deeper than that. Go back to 2022, Jay Johnson's first year. That's actually the more comparable situation to this season. LSU's the 2 seed in Hattiesburg, so you're in that 2-3 matchup. You're playing a Kennesaw State team that, while they don't have much on the mound, they were very, very good offensively. Just like this just like this Wofford team is. I don't know why I keep calling Wofford Wake Forest, but that's like the 5th time that's happened to me today. Wofford, very good offensively, just like that Kennesaw State team was in 2022. And that's in that regional, on the road, a 2-3 matchup, good offensive opponent, you saw Mikhail Hilliard go. Mikhail Hilliard was LSU's best pitcher from a starting standpoint in 2022. You used him there, knowing you were going to probably have to face Hurston Waldrop in a marble game if you got there, and you'd have Ty Floyd, who at that point had struggled. But you could not leave anything to chance. And you went Mikhail Hilliard, and that was the right move. And for all those reasons right there, you're going to see Gage Jump. If you want another example, look at this year. Y'all, Gage Jump pitched game number 1 of the SEC tournament on short rest. 4 days rest. That was his 5th day. And I sat here before that, and we went through all the reasons why I said I thought that was going to happen and why I thought that was the right move. And then Jay Johnson, after the game, told all of you and me, all of us, LSU had put that plan in motion 3 weeks ago. So ask yourself, do you honestly think if they were willing to do that with Gage Jump 3 weeks in advance to prepare him for that start, that they don't already have their plan in place for regionals? And it's going to be Jump. You want one more reason? Because, like I said, there's a lot of reasons that you go through this. Wofford has a really good starting pitcher that you're going to face. Like, they're not pitching off. They're the 3 seed going against the 2. Zach Cowan is the reigning D1Baseball.com National Pitcher of the Week. He is very, very good. Is he up to par with some of the starters that you faced in conference? Of course not. But the SEC is its own beast. This is a true ace that can give you some problems. 3 complete games on the year. He's got length. He's got a little bit more than a strikeout per inning. It's not overpowering, but what he does, he throws a lot of strikes. We went through this in our just immediate reaction to this regional draw. So that's another reason. You're going to face a true ace who's garnered national recognition coming into this weekend. You're not going to risk pitching off. And lastly, and probably the most important, this is, and I want to be perfectly clear, this is not an LSU-specific deal. This is a college baseball-specific deal. You want to stay in the winner's bracket. There's questions about LSU in the loser's bracket that we're going to get to, and I have some answers to them that you might find surprising. But you want to stay in the winner's bracket. That's your best path. Doesn't matter if you're LSU. It doesn't matter if you're North Carolina. It doesn't matter if you're Tennessee, Texas A&M, Clemson, Florida, Arizona, Oregon State. Go down it doesn't matter if you're college baseball teams aren't normally built to come out of the loser's bracket. And when you look at LSU and the struggles they had in the pitching staff early in this year, you can get a little worried there. You have to stay ahead. It's very similar to the conversation we had when LSU was facing Ole Miss. And someone asked a similar question. Like, look, you're Thursday, Friday, Saturday. They've wanted to keep guys on rest at points this year. Could you see maybe they pitch off and have see if they can steal that first game and then have jump Holman on regular rest? And the answer there was no. Because you went into that knowing you needed to sweep, and you can't sweep if you don't win the first one. Well, you can't get into the winner's bracket if you don't win the first one. It's going to be jump. I mean, you could raise a question since they're both on long rest. Could you flip them? Maybe. I mean, sure. But pitchers are such creatures of habit, and this is how you've done it the whole back half of the season. I would be very surprised if it's not Gage jump, and it should be. So we're going to put that to bed right now. No, LSU is not holding Gage jump or Luke Holman. They are not pitching off. None of that because they cannot afford to. They are facing a team that is 3rd in the nation in batting average, 7th in stolen bases, and top 25 in doubles. It is a very, very good team where 7 of the 9 everyday players hit over 300, and the other 2 are a tick below 300. It is a legitimate offensive club, and they have a legitimate pitcher on the other side, and you cannot leave anything to chance. So it will be Gage jump, in my opinion. Jay Johnson does not announce his pitching decisions in the postseason as we've known, but that's where I'm going with that for all the reasons that we just went through. All right, now that we've addressed the elephant in the room, we can go through a little bit of these other questions, which I found some of them really, really, really interesting. Let's start. Well, this person asked for these to be anonymous. So, yes, I will oblige on that, although I also will tell you they're good questions. There's no reason to want to be anonymous. These are good questions. Number 1, with lack of pitching depth, do we win this regional in 3? Well, let's chill with the win. Hold on, you gotta play and win it. Can you win it in 3? Sure. But I think the point there is the lack of pitching depth. And I actually want to look at this. LSU just showed you incredible pitching depth this past week in Hoover. I mean, did they not? Like, you won 4 games in a row with Jump Holman only pitching once, which could be a situation you find yourself in a regional. You got standout, step-up performances from, the likes of Justin Lohr and Sam Dutton and Will Helmers and all those guys to help piece together games and allow you to make comebacks. Like we talked about it with the South Carolina, the first South Carolina, really the first and second South Carolina game. LSU gave a bunch of runs, but you had guys step up when you needed it. It was Fidel Ulloa in that first game. And in the second game, it was really everybody after Aiden Moffitt. So I think there's more depth there than people are wanting to admit for LSU. So do you want to win it in 3? Of course. That's what we just went through. You want to stay in the loser's bracket because no college team is really built for that. But we all thought that last year going into Omaha, and look what happened. And I know LSU had a great offense, but LSU just gave up a bunch of runs in 2 games against SEC teams in the SEC tournament, and they got standout, step-up performances that allowed their offense to swing the sticks better and make the comeback. So I will say I think LSU has better depth on the mound than people are giving them credit for right now, and they're also performing better than people are giving them credit for right now, which blows my mind. And we've had that conversation plenty down the stretch here. LSU's pitching, but I'll say it one more time, LSU's pitching is the reason they are where they are right now. They are what led the turnaround. They were supposed to be the strength of this team. When they became the strength of this team, it led the turnaround. It's funny how that happens, but LSU's pitching's been much better really since they got run-ruled at Vanderbilt. To prove that even more, we talked all year about how well they pitched at Tennessee, even though they lost. Look at this past Sunday in the SEC Tournament Championship. They held Tennessee to 4 runs. They pitched really good against them again. So I think you actually have more depth there. I just do. Another question from our anonymous friend, do you think we see Helmers this weekend at some point? Sure, absolutely. Somebody else asked about that too. If Helmers gets more, was Harley Doucette wants, if Will Helmers getting more meaningful innings in the postseason. This is what I was saying about Will Helmers. I think you absolutely have a shot to see him again this weekend, but I think it's going to be in a role similar to what you have seen him in. Like, and this is just my opinion, LSU's got their main guys out of the pen. But you fall into a loser's bracket, yeah, a guy like Will Helmers is going to be incredibly important for you. And you have a little bit of confidence in him right now because of what he just did in the SEC tournament when you needed someone to really step up and go out there and keep you in a ball game and chew up innings, and he was able to do that. So yes. So, I mean, like, I'm not going to sit here and predict LSU to come through the loser's bracket. Because as I've said multiple times already, no college team is set up to really do that as a reliable path. LSU needs to stay in the winner's bracket. But if they fall, you should feel better right now about what is lying ahead or what you have as options in the bullpen. The third question from our anonymous friend, and a couple people asked this as well. What do you think changed with our hitting approach that allowed us to do so well in the SEC tournament, and can we keep it up? So this is a conversation that we've had, at least the can they keep it up part. We've had this conversation. What do I think changed? The number one thing that I think changed is confidence. LSU looks a lot more confident at the plate. And I think that has come from trusting the plan and the approach that Jay Johnson and Chief and all those guys have laid out for them, and then seeing that trust be rewarded down the stretch. We've talked so much about this LSU team needing something, needing to see one go through the net. Well, the timely hitting and hitting bullpens was a big problem for this team. You saw that change really against Texas A&M, where they have one of the best bullpens in the country, and twice in that series you rally late, come up with big timely hits, and push across winning runs. Same thing against Auburn with the walk-off double from Pearson the week before. And it just kind of kept going with that. The 2 Ole Miss games that you won, you had some clutch, timely hitting early that gave you the cushion. And I think that confidence just steadily grew and grew and grew, and they're not trying to do too much. Like LSU at points this year was pressing at the plate. They're not pressing. They look confident. They look loose. They're letting the game come to them at the plate. They are following the plan. Now, yes, we can talk about the lineup changes, and I'll get to that. But first and foremost for me, that's what it is. They just look completely different. The takes are more comfortable. The swings are more comfortable. Everything about them at the plate right now looks more comfortable. And they've done it against some really good pitching, and they've done it against, bullpen days in the SEC tournament. But for LSU, Ole Miss, Georgia, Kentucky, South Carolina, and South Carolina, they went 9, 9, 11, 11, 12 in runs scored. And when you ran into Tennessee, it got a little tougher because Tennessee's a legitimate national championship contender and one of the best teams in the country. And still, because you're pitching better, you were within 1 run. And you had plenty of opportunity in that game. You had the bases loaded in that game, and Stephen Milam got backpicked at first base. That stinks, but it happened. But, you come through with a big hit there, sure. So I look at LSU and I see them a lot more confident at the plate. I think Michael Braswell in the leadoff spot has been a massive addition. And, we've had that conversation here. We had it earlier this year between Kling and Braswell. But somebody had asked, should LSU flip? Should they make a change there? And we looked at him. That was, I don't remember how many weeks ago that was or not. We had the conversation. And my answer to that at that point was, okay, let's look at him. Jay Johnson's looking for 2 things, really, in the leadoff guy. Someone who gets on base, but also gets in scoring position. And when you looked at Kling and Braswell, in a lot of areas, they were comparable guys. At that point, Braswell was your leading double getter on the team, and Kling was second. They both had on-base percentages of over 400. They both had 1 home run on the season. With all the key things you're looking for what Jay wants out of a leadoff guy, they were comparable. And because of that, in that moment, I said, until one separates themselves, no, I don't think you make the change. Michael Braswell separated himself. And you saw that immensely in Hoover. But you started to see it in that Ole Miss series, and then it just went to another level in Hoover. And yes, that has set the table for Tommy White, for Jared Jones. I think a lot of that helped Hayden Travinski kind of have a much better week in Hoover. But then you've also seen these freshmen really grow up in Stephen Milam, who struggled early in conference play, but down the back half, and especially in Hoover's been on an absolute tear. So that has helped with your offense. Ashton Larson's emergence obviously helped. Now, he struggled in Hoover, but you look for a bounce back for him. Look at Jake Brown right now. Jake Brown was able to step in there and be really good. And then you have a veteran like Alex Milazzo who's just come up with a bunch of clutch ABs for you down the stretch, flipping the lineup. So I like the lineup moves, and it's the production 1 through 9 that we always talk about combined with the confidence. And the confidence is one reason you're getting the production 1 through 9. And you're running out a very similar lineup every game with the same guys. You've settled. They don't have to worry about coming out if they have a bad game or showing up to the ballpark knowing, or am I going to be in the lineup today or anything like that. All of it's there. And that's all helped the confidence. For me, it's confidence. Can they keep it up? Yeah, they can. I've said it many times. That is the reason I believe this run is sustainable. Because LSU, the strength of their team was thought to be pitching. When it became that, they really started to play better. But all the way back to last fall when we talked about them, we said, okay, you're going to have to lean on the pitching early because the offense is going to be slow to come around. But when the offense comes around, they have a chance to be a really good baseball team. You're pitching better, your offense has come around, and don't they look like a pretty good baseball team? The answer is yes. Yes, they do. So that is 100%. Yes, they can keep it up. It's not going to be easy. They're going to have to stay confident. They're going to have to stay within the plan, within themselves, not try to do too much, all of that, and can keep moving the offense, moving the ball. But if they do, then yeah. I mean, I would not want to pitch to them right now. I wouldn't. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's absolutely. I want to get to this one here real quick as well. Guy Cliff Nelson asks, for LSU to advance out of the regional, what is one thing that has to happen and what is one thing that cannot happen? And I went to this one right now because it piggybacks off of what I just said. Because it goes kind of hand in hand. The one thing that has to happen, LSU has to continue to produce offensively. I feel very confident that LSU is going to pitch well enough to win this regional. They have to continue on their offensive pace. And I just went through all the reasons that I think that they can. I'm not telling you LSU has to go out there and average 10 runs a game. LSU has to continue with their timely hitting. And then you rely on your bullpen to close things out. which they've been very good at down the stretch. That's the one thing that has to happen. LSU has to continue the timeliness of the offense that they've had. The one thing that cannot happen, I'll say losers bracket, but not trying to contradict what we talked about earlier. I think LSU has the depth and has gotten some enough standout and step-up performances that you wouldn't just completely throw your arms up and go, oh, well, that's it. It's over. Like, I don't think this comes down to LSU flat running out of pitching like it did in 2022. But I'll say losers bracket solely because you're facing a top 4 national seed in North Carolina. And they're really deep on the mound. And they've had 3 starters that have been pretty good for them. They have a really nice 1-2 punch. And they've had 3 starters for the majority of the year that have been fairly consistent for them. It's why they were able to win 22 games in the ACC. So falling into a loser's bracket and having to come back on the road against a top, not just a top 8, a top 4 national seed in the country, that cannot happen. Like, you have to avoid that at all costs. And if you continue your timely hitting and the timeliness of the offense, I think that you can. So, again, like I said, it kind of goes hand in hand because I think the one thing that has to happen for them to win is the offense. I think the one thing that can't happen is the offense kind of going away because that would put you in the losers bracket. And I think coming back against UNC, having to come back and beat UNC twice is going to be really difficult if that happens to be the case. But again, I feel much more encouraged. That's the better way to say it. I feel much more encouraged about the depth and guys stepping up on LSU's pitching staff after watching them make a run from Tuesday all the way to Sunday in Hoover and only using Gage Jump and Luke Holman twice and only using Griffin Herring twice and Gavin Guidry twice. Like, you can, Jump and Holman once, but Herring twice, Act twice, Guidry twice. Like, you can use those guys twice in a regional and having this stand up for them. So I feel better about that now. Let's see. There was something else I wanted to get to. Where was it? Here we go. At Goatee Sports sent in, does the NCAA have to rethink postseason seeding because LSU's tied with the 3rd best odds to win the Natty, yet as a number 2 seed? Okay, twofold answer here. Yes, the NCAA needs to rethink seeding, but it has nothing to do with the Vegas odds. But I do want to talk about the Vegas odds. They need to rethink seeding just because they're so based off of they need new metrics. The RPI is such a huge part of how this goes, and it's not a uniform metric. So I mean, I think there is a seeding problem, but I think it has much more to do with that, and not just RPI. I shouldn't say, but just college baseball is not a uniform sport around the country. It just isn't. I mean, you have the Southeast with the ACC and the SEC that are just far and away better than the rest of the country, and then you have the rest of the country. So some of those teams are going to be judged a little bit differently. I think 2 seed is correct for LSU this year. They won 13 conference games in the regular season and then got to 17 with the run in Hoover. That is fair. Like, that, I think that is 100% fair for them. Now, when I look at a team like Mississippi State as a 2 seed, that's crap. Mississippi State should be a top 16 host. They just should. They got to 20 SEC wins, technically, with Hoover, and 17 in the regular season. And with the strength of the league that it was, the State should be a host. So, like, it has to do with resume. They have a resume evaluating process, evaluating problem, I should say, with the NCAA tournament. What I wanted to say about the Vegas odds, because I'm aware, I know where LSU is there, and I know what LSU's odds are to win regionals. This is the thing about the Vegas odds. Vegas, they get everything right a lot of the time because they're not in the business of losing money. But in doing that, they also look at teams that are going to be very public and have a great reputation, like LSU, and they're going to get better odds because they know they'll set it just right to where it's enticing enough because they know the public's going to load up on that, and if it doesn't happen, they're going to clean up. That's why Vegas is rich. That's why they're great at this. Do I think LSU should have the 3rd best odds to win the national championship? No, I do not. I do not. Do I think LSU should be a toss-up to win this regional? No, I do not think that. I don't. I think LSU should have the second best odds to win the regional. But Vegas knows LSU's the biggest brand in college baseball going today. That is not arguable. And the public knows that. They all just saw him win a natty. You're still seeing Paul Skeens dominate, like, in the headlines, and it's always a company, former LSU. Like, they know that. They want people to load up on LSU, and the public will, and we'll see. But that's the thing I hesitate with in a sport like college baseball at Vegas odds, because it doesn't have a large following, and Vegas knows that. But they know the select few teams that people are going to load up on, and LSU is one of them. Could LSU be the last team standing this year? Sure, of course they could be. But them having the third best odds to win the Natty feels fishy to me. Just as someone who has watched them all year long, covered them as closely as we have here, that feels fishy, even with how well they're playing. And I think I've thrown them enough bouquets over the last few weeks in that in that regard. Okay, let's talk about Christian Little, because I had a couple different people ask about Christian Little. At G. Jocelyn asked about him. Michael Spears asked about him. Glenn LeBlanc, in a sense, asked about Christian Little. First and foremost, here was Jay Johnson's update on Christian Little's lat injury, which, thank goodness, it was a lat injury and not anything more serious with his arm or elbow. Here is his update when he met with the media Monday.
Yeah, I think he's doing okay. We'll have to see. And it's tricky because we're in that time of year. Like, if you can't pitch, like, you can't be on the roster, because of, especially in the regional round, because of 5 games potentially in 3 or 4 days. I'm optimistic based on where the pain is, talking to Isaac Trujillo, but it'll probably be how fast does he recuperate, and we're probably not going to know that till Thursday. He'll definitely travel with us. It's just a matter of, it'll probably be a late decision on whether he's going to be on the active roster or not.
So that's actually a really good update. He's rehabbing all that. He's going to travel. We'll just see if they get him on the active roster. I hope they do, man. When I saw him go down, I mean, that was gut-wrenching to see. Just for a kid who had the struggles throughout his career that he has, the journey that he's had. I mean, we don't have to rehash all of it, but for him to finally be pitching his best that he has in college, for something like that to happen in a game where I hesitate to use the word meaningless, because you're playing for a trophy and you want to win trophies. Don't misunderstand me, but for the greater goal of LSU, that game did not matter. And for the greater goal, you want to win 100%, but if that game really mattered, Gage Jump would have started it. So to see that happen for him in that game, and that's something for LSU, y'all, like, as bad as things have been at times this year, and they've been really bad at times this year, LSU has done remarkably well at staying healthy. So to see that happen, man, that was a bummer. So I'm glad to hear that it sounds like he's definitely okay. It's just his status. Like, if you don't have Christian Little this weekend, but you go on and win this regional, you might have him for super regionals, at least the way that sounds. So the questions that came in really revolved around who gets his innings if he can't go. And right now, we're not saying he can't, but if he can't go. Michael Spears asked out of Guidry, Hurd, Ulloa. Glenn LeBlanc mentioned Cam Johnson. You're looking for righty innings. I think the first two you look at there are Guidry and Ulloa, just because Jay has really gone to them second outside of Christian Little. Like, the last few weeks, you've seen it go, Starter, Little, Herring. So I think that's kind of the way you would go. That's where they've been going, and then you've seen Guidry and Ulloa kind of in between that. So I go there. They've both done really well. I know Ulloa gave up that 3-run homer on Sunday, but he pitched really well. I mean, he stabilized that game for you against South Carolina, the first one, and allowed you to come back when really nobody else could. He's had a lot of clutch performances down the stretch for LSU. Really kind of looks like the guy we talked about him as coming out of the preseason scrimmages and early in the season before he had that little tiny bitty setback. So I think you're looking at Ulloa and Guidry the same way. I mean, Gavin struggled a little bit in the middle part of this year, but ever since that midweek game against it was Northwestern State, I believe, where he just went in there and gave you the long relief outing. you've really seen him take a step forward again as well. So, I mean, I go there. Thatcher Hurd's a really interesting one. And somebody else asked about Hurd and him potentially turning the corner. It was Kyle at K Farmer 25. Mentioned him as a bridge guy in the pen. And I think that's the role you look at for Thatcher Hurd. But I'll go back to the conversation we had about Thatcher Hurd last year throughout. And Jay Johnson said this at Media Day last season. So like, a week before the season starts. That for the 2023 team to be its best version of itself, Thatcher Hurd was going to have to pitch in meaningful games. And he went through, his struggles early, got booted from the starting rotation, closed games for you, had long relief, and then by the end of it is starting the national championship game, goes 6 innings, gave up 2 runs, actually I think 2 hits, and dominated Florida, and LSU won a natty. It was prophetic. And it was the same thing against Oregon State in the regional, and Georgia to close the regular season, and South Carolina in the SEC tournament, and just all those outings that we know of. The same thing is true. For the 2024 LSU Tigers to be the best version of themselves, Thatcher Hurd's got to pitch in meaningful games for you. At the beginning of this year, we did a thing where we looked at the top 10 most important players for LSU. Thatcher Hurd was my number one guy. That doesn't change. His role changes. I think what you've seen from him the last few times out is he's really good for 6 outs. Can you steal innings with Thatcher Hurd? Can he serve as a setup guy or maybe even a closer for you? And if you really need him to give you a spot start, man, can he find it somehow? But I think where you see him most is that bridge type role. Hey, big fella, go get you 6 outs. The other guy is Sam Dutton, who's been really good for you from a righty. Glenn LeBlanc asked about Cam Johnson and if he could potentially see a bigger role now that Little's hurt and might not pitch this weekend. I think Cam Johnson has a great future at LSU. I think Cam Johnson is going to be afforded every opportunity this offseason to grow and to develop, and in the fall be afforded every opportunity to be a starting pitcher for LSU as a sophomore. I don't know if you see him in any type of meaningful role right here in the NCAA tournament. Cam Johnson has not pitched since May 5th. That was against Texas A&M, and it was that Sunday game against Texas A&M. So I don't think you really probably see too much from him. If LSU's in a loser's bracket situation and you need arms, yes, but again, look at this weekend look at the week in Hoover. Like LSU got pretty thin on the mound at times, and you still didn't see him. So I don't think they're quite ready there with him yet. And guys develop at their own pace. I think he gets every opportunity going forward this offseason to really be a big part. And who knows? Maybe I'm totally wrong and you do see him this weekend. All right, let's get to a few more. I'll come back to that one because it doesn't really have anything really anything to do with LSU, but I do want to answer because I thought it was a great question, so we'll come back to that. Our anonymous friend did send one more in, and it's a conversation we've had, but let's go through it one more time. What is the process for determining who would host if LSU wins the regional and DBU wins the Tucson regional? He says, there's bids and involved, but can you elaborate? Well, it's that simple. You put in a bid like you would to host a regional. You put in a bid, and whoever wins the bid gets the host. I don't know if DBU put in a bid, but I would imagine they did because they were on the hosting bubble. So the committee would have to decide which bid wins out. And, of course, you would assume that LSU would win that bid, but I will point to the example last year where Tennessee upset Clemson. Southern Miss scored an upset in their regional. Both teams had put in bids, and Southern Miss's bid beat out Tennessee. So, yeah, you would assume that LSU would get it, but it's not guaranteed. The way it is guaranteed is if LSU, the 2, wins the regional in Chapel Hill, and, say, West Virginia, the 3, wins the regional in Tucson. Then it is because LSU is the higher seeding team. But that is how that process would work. Let's see. At LSU GA18, do you see Brown starting at least the opener this weekend? Yes, at least the opener, and I would have him start all of them, quite frankly. There's been a bunch of questions about Bingham for Kling in here as well. And, I mean, give me Jake Brown over both of those guys right now. I loved what I saw from him in the SEC tournament. He played a really good center field. So, yes. Give me more Jake Brown. I'm here for that all the way. Let's see. I think the only one I have left now is that one. Yes. All right. At CT_ESPN, or excuse me, ESPN. What? Did I just Antonio Brown that? I think I did. At CT_LSU. Sorry about that. AB. Ooh, man. What a Twitter follow. Anyway, this guy asks, who has the best chance to get out of their own regional as a host? And I thought that was just a really, really, really good question. You can look at percentages. You can look at Vegas odds. You can look at a lot of different things. This may surprise some people when I give you one of my first answers, because on paper, I think you look at it and you're like, oh man, that looks like a pretty tough regional. I don't hate Texas A&M's path in their regional. I know they have Texas, ULL's there, and the Cajuns have been very, very good. The Cajuns are not deep enough, I don't think, to make a total run through that regional. And I think I might also just be too fixated on the Texas team that I saw earlier in this year when LSU played them, but they weren't very good, and I just don't know if I believe they're that improved to this point. So I actually don't hate Texas A&M's draw, and I think they have a pretty darn good shot. A pretty darn good shot of making it out of there. I like Arkansas's draw an awful lot too. Lane Burroughs had a great team at Louisiana Tech. They were awesome. They're a tough two, but again, they're not deep enough. Like, I don't think they're deep enough, and I don't think Southeast Missouri State or Kansas State are any good. So I like Arkansas as well there, and I think NC State has a pretty good chance too. But Georgia is the answer I will give you. After going through all of that, Georgia is the answer that I will give you. Georgia is facing Army, and then Georgia Tech and UNCW is in there. Georgia has not pitched well, obviously, throughout this season at points, but they are very well rested after losing Tuesday in the SEC tournament. They play great in that ballpark with the amount of left-handed hitters that they do have in that lineup and that short porch to right, and how Georgia can just smash the ball to the park. And then, oh yeah, there's Charlie Condon. Georgia should be able to outscore every team in that regional, and I think they will. The only other team I would give you is Kentucky. I think Kentucky got a really favorable draw. They have a 3 seed from the Big Ten. The Big Ten's not a good league in Illinois. Indiana State's interesting because they were on the hosting bubble, but Kentucky won the SEC. They should dispatch of Indiana State. That should happen. So my two official answers for that would be Georgia and Kentucky. I think they have the best chance to make it out. So, all right, y'all. Thanks for the questions. Loved it. Got a lot of good ones in there, and I think we covered a lot of important topics there as well. So smash the like button, get subscribed up if you have not already on the YouTube channel and your favorite podcast app. Share, follow me on social media, all those things greatly appreciated. Thank you for listening, obviously, and be here next time for more on Musso at the Box.